What's going on, everybody? It's Webster Style, the man, the voice, the fragrance, coming back with another dope conversation. And this time we're joined by the lovely Qimmah Burgess of Pillow Talk with the T podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time. And one of the things that really struck me, I'm sorry, let me back up. Could you tell everybody about Pillow Talk with the T?
Yes, Pillow Talk with the T is a candid, uncomfortable conversation where we no longer sweep under the rug and we speaking about the pink elephant in the room.
Okay. And that's one of the things that really had me gravitate toward the podcast and wanting to have you on because as we all know in the past, really pandemic kicked off a lot of conversations online. And one of the things I
Mhm.
really appreciated about your podcast and the demeanor of the guests and really the conversations that you've had is in contrast to a lot of the say relationship conversations, the red pill stuff, the pink pill stuff. I understand arguments. I don't disagree with some points based on my own life experiences. And I'm pretty sure a lot of ladies can say they don't disagree with some points either. However, much like a recent podcast shows I listened to, there's a whole lot of capping going on. A whole
Yeah,
lot and one of the things
absolutely.
I really enjoyed it about your podcast, it was real people. It was real people, real life, real experiences, and being truthful and honest. And there was one I was listening to the other day, and I forget which one it was, but someone brought up accountability, and you voiced how that triggered you, and I really appreciate that. Now I understand why and how that really started in this whole um, lexicon of conversation between men and women, just conversations in general. However, it's one of those words now that has just become so regurgitated, like it's just a word that's used to try to explain. But again, accountability to means nothing if there's no action. It's not really
Hmm.
accountability, you're just saying the word. And I liked how you really brought that to the forefront, and how that especially now is in many respects cheapened what the word means in all these conversations, because it always gets thrown out. And I really liked how you had that spin on it during the course of that conversation. Like I said, it's real life, and I really enjoyed that about your podcast.
Yeah.
So
And that's the thing
okay.
about that I even enjoy about the podcast is because I like to have real organic people. I like to have people speaking, telling their story, not me telling their story for them. And I like them to come unapologetic, transparent, and just being themselves. It's like basically having that uncomfortable conversation at grandma's kitchen table.
Right. Right. And I noticed you had my boys from the Uncomfortable Convo a while back, and Kendra as well when she was a bit more active. I was been on that podcast a couple times as well. Now tell me, how did you start Pillow Talk with the T?
Well, Pillow Talk with the T, you got to thank family members for that, honestly. Because I was never thinking about putting myself out there to even create a podcast. Um, it was the fact is that a family member of mine felt like my voice, or there was a voice of mine needed to be put out there. Me being the elder sister, grandchild, and older first cousin, I'm always the ones that people come for advice, and I tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, and I give it to them straight. Because that's something that our grandparents did with us. So it's like me taking on that, I'm giving it to them straight. Fast forward, rewind to a year later, I just swooped it away, wasn't even hearing what she was talking about. And then all of a sudden, you ever felt like that fire within you know that there's something you have to do, but you don't know what that fire is. Like I say, fast forward a year later, basically that's when we family gathering again met up. Same cousin that brought it to my attention. She stated it was like, "Hey, did you start that podcast?" So soon as she said that, that's when the flame was like, ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, "Are you serious? You telling me that's what that is in my belly that I need to do?" So in regards to that, for no one effect, anything I do, I make sure I do forthcoming with my overall all. So when I did decide that that was what it was and figured out that's what it was, that's when I ended up creating Pillow Talk with the T podcast.
That's awesome. I swear, it seems like I'm hearing similar stories. Not quite like that, but there's always that one person who's always kind of talking to you about it. Hey, you should do this. You should do this. You should do this. And then it just like that lights that spark, and then that flame just consumes everything. I think that's really awesome. Now, what sort of reception have you gotten since you really started the podcast and it's been expanding?
I would say basically I get a lot of women, but men and women, but majority women, just basically saying, I love the conversation you state and you saying exactly what it is that I'm feeling or what I'm going through. I feel like I could relate to you and you're speaking about your experiences, and even just the fact of I have so many people feeling like there's no judgment talking to you, and the conversations that you do create, they are actually real and what we are going through nowadays. So those are the different things that I get from men and women, but of course majority of women, and I love it. And it's like a lot of, even this a woman recently last week, she was like, I feel like you was putting the words and a voice, well, the voice to my words that I just didn't know how to be able to say it. And that's with a lot of people nowadays. They have that inside them that they want to put a voice to it, but they don't have the security, the confidence, or they worrying about what everybody's going to think and say. So no, let me not say that because I don't want to be judged.
Right. And again, really enjoying your podcast, the authenticity, and that's something I also love as well. The the non-judgments, especially for a lot of your topics. I don't remember if you had polygamy coming up, was that's one you've had, a
Mhm.
lot of the more adult content, and those topics unto themselves. Some people can get a bit squeamish about and really talking about what they like, what they don't like, who they are individually, especially in a public setting
Mhm.
like this. And I really enjoy how you, as a host, really make your guests feel comfortable talking to you and talking to the audience as well, and never once having that eye of judgment on them, like, girl, you like that, or something of
Mhm.
that nature. And I really appreciate that about you. And again, more so with the podcast as well, going back to it, and I have to keep saying this is something I really love with every episode I've listened to, though, thus far, the authenticity, much like you said, as far as someone said to you, you're speaking things that they're thinking, and exactly, these are real conversations. And I think in many respects, especially with the proliferation of so many podcasts nowadays, especially on adult topics, real life topics,
Mhm.
that's sorely missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I've really seen that been missing outside, because these are conversations that me and I grew up having with my family. Even at
Mhm.
41, I'm still having this with my mother. And if my grandparents was here, I would still be having it with them, because that's something they created for us. And that's something I also created for my son, who's currently 22 years old. Um, and I felt like me just looking outside the world. When I went to college, before I went to college, I thought this is what the world is. We have these uncomfortable conversations, we bridging the gap, and we are speaking how we feel. But when I went to college, I was like, oh, everybody don't live the way I live. Everybody don't have the upbringing that I have. So I was like, why is that? That's just so. Then of course I had to sit back, I had to learn, I had to listen, and I had to ask my friends, why is that? And of course, they, tell me, well, that's something they choose not to do. That's something they family or their mother, parents, or whatever, et cetera, did not create for them because they felt like everything has its place. Absolutely. But I felt like when it comes to your family, your parents, they're your first teachers. They're the ones to be able to teach you about your emotional intelligence, about having that uncomfortable conversation, and then tap into what it is that you feel. So, and I seen that outside. I was like, nah, we gotta fix this. We gotta do better.
No, you're absolutely right with that. Now, I want to shift gears for a moment, and ask your opinion on something. And this is a question that I have a certain mindset, especially I like to say I'm a gentleman. I do my best to every day. And one of the topics that when you speak of men and women, but men specifically, and being a gentleman is that topic of chivalry. So I want to ask you, do you think chivalry is dead?
Nope, not at all. Not at all. I do not believe in that. Anything that I feel like is dead that's because you choose that it's dead. But chivalry is definitely not dead. It's something I teach. Like I say, I teach as my son, the males in my family members continue to do. That's something that both of my partners continue to do to me every single day. So I believe that chivalry is still alive. It all depends on who we talking to. It all depends the individual. This is something they practice. It's something that they believe. Again, something you believe will never be dead.
I love that answer. And for myself, I've always asked when I've heard people, whether it's men or women, say that, I said, who taught you? Like, who do you hang with? Because my circles, my friends, for the most part, I got a couple of whole friends.
Mhm.
They always been that way. I love them to death, their family. But
Yeah.
I was like, who are you? Who have you been around where you say that this is dead? If that's the case, you need to change your circle. You need to learn some new lessons, because
Mhm.
very much like you said, it's dead if you say it's dead. You're dead if you don't act on you perform the actions, and you don't have the mindset as well. And I really, really appreciate that answer, because I think that, especially in these conversations we're having, I feel like in those conversations, not your conversations, because your conversations are
Mhm.
different, that mindset is just lost. And it's so, you on this side, you on that side. Yeah, we may meet in the middle
Yeah.
sometimes, but it comes off as performance art and not real dialogue on
Yeah.
a lot of these podcasts. And a very topic like chivalry is something that, yes, I can see maybe a lot of younger women not really seeing that, because the men, I can understand. I'm just a few years older. I'm 44, so I totally get that and understand we may have a different perspective on how things are supposed to be, because that's how we were taught and raised, and
Yeah.
that's how my mama raised me. Yes ma'am, no ma'am, holding the door open, things I still do
Mhm.
to this day. So I totally
Yeah.
get that. And that's why these conversations that you have and others are very important, because you get to see that different perspective, and also a realistic perspective. I think that, again, I can't harp on this enough, because that's why I really enjoy your podcast. The
I
Not just
appreciate it.
the rawness of it. And we're not sort of talking about raw as far as cursing involved, but raw as far as the transparency of what people are thinking and what people are feeling, and even what people are
Mhm.
going through. And I know, just some of the podcasts I've listened to, you've touched on your story and the things that you've gone through personally,
Mhm.
in relationships in your life to get you to this point. Um, so I really enjoyed that. And I'm gonna switch gears a little bit too, and maybe somewhat of a jar, bit lighter than previous. So I am a humongous fragrance head. And I want to ask you, are you into fragrances at all?
I love fragrances. Men, women, and men. I love it. I love it.
So, what fragrance right now are you constantly going back to, if there is one?
I love J'adore by Dior. That's something
Okay.
that's one of my favorites. And then if that's but my also one time that was introduction to me when I was a kid was Clinique Happy. That was something was
Okay.
amazing. So even though they got remixes, they got other ones, but Clinique Happy is the number one uno. So but between those two, yes.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. It doesn't matter which partner or both partners. What fragrances do you like to smell on your partners? Or
I
even
I
signature
love
or notes, if not specific fragrances?
okay, so I'm trying to remember one of my partners, his fragrance. This is his favorite, but I can't remember what it is. But it's very light.
Hmm.
It's not loud, but it's not too light. It's like in the middle, and it really blends so amazing with his own body chemistry. And
Hmm.
I've said this before. I'm not sure if you probably heard this episode on my show. Every time he spray it on, I'm like, nah, you can't even leave out. the door yet. Like, wait a minute, 1 second. So, but yeah, I have to really, I can't remember what it is, but it's amazing. And I seen it's like a black little square bottle. I didn't even pay attention to the name, but it's so freaking amazing on him.
It might be what blue shouldn't be. It's a little square bottle. Could be. But no, you know what? I think guys, we all have that one fragrance that our significant others like you cannot leave the house. I was talking to another interview the other day, which just premiered today, and he was saying how, yeah, I forget the fragrance, but he said, the looks, and my wife's like, you really wore it out the house today? So yeah, I get it. I totally understand, and that's one of the things I love about fragrance. Not so much the attention, but the
Hmm.
sort of, well, much like you said about your partner, how you can find that right fragrance that really mixes with your body chemistry.
Yes.
That's why I always say the fragrances are intimate, because even though it smells a certain way, once it mixes with you, is
Hmm.
different. It's a unique scent, regardless of what it is. And that's one, like, what excites me to really collect, to smell different things. You see how different things smell on me, how different notes work in the weather. A winter fragrance, how's that work? Like, it's 84 degrees today. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, how does this really heavy dark oud tobacco vanilla fragrance work in a hot spring weather compared to when it works? Like, I love that experimentation
Yeah.
of it.
And a lot of people don't know that you're supposed to have like different colognes and perfumes during each season. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't really know that. So, but you got that one signature, and I understand that people do wear, like, they just want to wear it all season around, and it works for some, and some it may not work for.
Yeah, that's very true. I always say diversify. You don't need a whole lot, but get a couple in your
Mm-mm.
arsenal, some you can switch out. And also, there are some fragrances that work for different occasions. For instance, what I wore Pete and Pedro's Villain yesterday, which is similar to Tom Ford's Tobacco Vanilla. So it's
Okay.
tobacco, vanilla, spice. That is not a fragrance I would wear to a black tie event. It's very heavy, it's very rich, it's very dark.
Yeah.
So that's like one of those things where you got to know where the right place and time, as well as seasonal is as well, what really works for your fragrance. Also, and again, your body chemistry is a very
Hmm.
big factor into how things work, how long fragrances last, because there are fragrances that last long on my skin and my body
Yeah.
chemistry. Then I'll go online and I'm like on TikTok on the comments like, oh, this only lasted X amount of time with me. I was like, okay, I understand your mile may vary depending on the fragrance. Like, it lasts 4 hours with you, it lasts 8 hours on me. Maybe my skin absorbs it more, maybe the moisture I use,
Hmm.
I don't know. But that's part of the fun with fragrances, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love it. Same thing with me. But I grew up big because, I'm not sure, maybe since we are the same age, like my grandparents, and it's always come back to the grandparents, where those was the times, even like my stepfather and my mom, when they used to go out and they used to have date nights and go out to dance, they go to dance the step clubs, and
Hmm.
I seen him put on his suit and tie, and she got on her beautiful dress with her heels. And that was just something that I seen that both of them do, my grandparents and my parents, where my grandmother, she taught us about scents and perfumes, and my brothers and them about colognes and how important it is. And that's how I also knew more about the pressure points, because people think you're supposed to
Hmm.
just go like
Oh
this.
no, yes,
And I'm
I hate
like,
that with passion. Like, why do
I'm
you
like,
do that?
listen, it's the pressure points. I don't like when people do that. I do not like that. I'm like, you're doing so wrong. Oh, but I love teaching people and saying, no, let me show you how to really do this. And then they, especially if a person is open minded to learning, and they'll be like, I never knew that. And I was like, absolutely,
Right,
trust me, it will last longer in your pressure points.
right. Exactly. Exactly. Now, let me ask you another question. This is more maybe not so much personal, but in your own words, who is Qimmah?
Kwamia is unapologetic. She's transparent. She's loving. She's caring. She have an open mind to learning so many different things as she continue to walk on this earth and to continue to elevate to be the best person of herself. But Kwame also had that don't give a fuck attitude too. So and not only that, as I continue to learn, is that she has standards. She have boundaries, and she have no problem filling up your cup long as you actually reciprocate it back.
Awesome. It actually it makes me it brings up a question that's popped in my head. You've been doing the podcast what 2 years now, or is it?
I've been doing a podcast for 3 years because even
Okay, three
before,
years.
yeah, for 3 years, yeah.
Okay. Now, with the topics that you've had, the guests that you've had a lot of serious conversations, a lot of personal conversations. How has if doing the podcast help you grow?
Woo, good question. Um, it basically helped me grow in just the fact of just communication wise, being because people don't understand it's a difference of listening and hearing. They don't know that it's this is a separation in the two. And just being able to communicate by doing so, because part of communication is listening as well as hearing. So that definitely helped me grow in just listening and hearing. It helped me in regards of just having more sympathy for other people's stories and other people's situations, and also me, Kwamia then and Kwamia now, from the fact of this podcast helped me being able to accept people's experiences, because that old me was like, girl, what are you talking about? But of course, through healing journey, the whole thing of life and what I've been through, and even therapy, um, and even just getting this from a Yama Van Zant, because that's one powerful woman. She said you can never be able to change no one's experience, but just accept their experience and what they've been through. So this podcast was able to also help me do that and concrete overall out of everything else that I've been through, but also listening and hearing and having that understanding of people's story.
That's powerful. That's really, really powerful. You know what? I'm gonna end it there because that's a heck of a way to leave this interview. Kwame, I want to thank you again for your time and I appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes, so you can be able to find Pillow Talk with the T podcast on all podcast streaming platforms, as well as on every social media platform as well. And not only that, but also on YouTube every Thursday at 12 midnight. There's a new episode that drops with deeper and deeper, more uncomfortable conversations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Make sure you check her out, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you next time.